I was a princess of a ruined nation, a trophy for the man who shattered my world. Emperor Alexander called me his beloved, yet every kiss was a move on his imperial chessboard. He sacrificed our child for his crown and used me as bait to crush his rivals. To him, I was a pawn. I chose the abyss over his throne. Now he rules a silent empire, haunted by the one heart he could never truly conquer. When Isabella entered Springbliss Palace, the hibiscus flowers that filled the courtyard had already withered. That summer, only 3 months after the fall of the Yan kingdom, Isabella, the eldest princess of Yan, was sent by imperial decree to marry the war's victor, the emperor of the Cheng kingdom. She was given the rank of Karen. After a single tearful plea from her kneeling brother, Lucas Li, Isabella, once a princess, was reduced to a status barely above that of a common maid. Chiron, a title so low, it meant she could be ordered about by any master in the palace. Knowing what she was about to face, Isabella grew ever more cautious. Her personal maid, Luna, had just finished unpacking when a palace eunuch arrived with a decree summoning Karen Li to Heavenly Peace Palace. Heavenly Peace Palace was the main hall of the Chen court, a place a low-ranking Chiron like herself would normally never be permitted to enter. Isabella had no time to think. She hurriedly changed her clothes and stepped into the eunuch's small sedan chair. The majestic hall of Heavenly Peace was brilliantly lit, filled with the sounds of feasting. The first thing Isabella saw upon entering was the emperor, seated high on the dragon throne. Alexander Cheng was even more handsome and resolute than the rumors described, with the natural air of a man born to rule the world. He had led his armies in person, broken through the gates of the Yan Palace, and driven her brother, Lucas Li, from his throne. But Isabella didn't feel much hatred for him. The kingdoms had been at war for years. Though born into a royal family, she knew little of political schemes or military matters. She cared more that the common people had food to eat and clothes to wear. Although the Yan kingdom was defeated, its people submitting and her brother Lucas demoted from emperor to king, Alexander Cheng had not harmed the common folk or her family. Standing in the great hall, Isabella instantly became the center of attention. She sank to her knees and bowed low before her new king. A glint appeared in Alexander Cheng's deep eyes. "It seems the entire fortune of the Yan kingdom resides in you," he said. "You truly live up to the name of a kingdom-toppling beauty." The hall erupted in laughter, and the mockery felt like knives, making Isabella's face burn. "In that case," Alexander Cheng said, holding his golden goblet aloft, "for this celebration, the Chiron shall perform a dance for my empire." Only then did she realize that today was the Cheng kingdom's victory banquet. The tribute from Yan had just arrived. Alexander was simply using her to showcase his power, and Isabella felt a sharp pain as if something inside her was cracking. The pain was fleeting. She composed herself and began to dance gracefully. In the 3rd year of the Hongjing era of the Great Cheng Empire, Chiron Isabella Li, newly arrived at the palace, stunned everyone with her rainbow feather dance. When news spread, the king of Yan, Lucas Li, refused to eat for 3 days, and the people of Yan wept with their faces in their hands. Isabella returned to Springbliss Palace to find her maid Luna, with eyes swollen like walnuts from crying. Seeing Isabella return, Luna quickly fetched water and helped her wash up, her tears falling once more. "They insulted you so horribly, princess. When I heard about it, I felt like dying." Isabella smiled and shook her head. "It's nothing. Since I came here, I've been prepared for anything. If I let things like this upset me, I'd have died of frustration by now." "Princess, do you know what the other palace servants are saying about you? I can't bear to see you suffer this kind of humiliation." "Luna," Isabella said, wiping away her maid's tears, "you must remember, you can no longer call me princess from now on. It's late, let's go to sleep." Only then did Luna finish her tasks and help Isabella settle into bed. The night was deep, but Isabella felt no desire to sleep. She had managed to comfort Luna, but she couldn't comfort herself. Even if she could forget the mocking laughter of the court officials, she could not forget the deep gaze of Alexander Cheng as he watched her dance. The nights in the Cheng kingdom were so cold, just like the emperor's heart. "The emperor is here." A chief eunuch's announcement from outside the door made Isabella think she was dreaming. But when Alexander Cheng was standing by her bed, she startled awake. She scrambled out of bed to greet him but missed her footing and stumbled, falling right into his chest. The smell of alcohol filled her nose as she felt him lift her into his arms. "Karen Lee, you play your games well. You're the first woman to play so hard to get with me." Alexander's words were flippant, lacking the dignity he had in the great hall and carrying the air of a worldly rogue. Isabella frowned. How much had he drunk to act with such disregard for his imperial dignity? "You've had too much to drink, Emperor," she said. "Please return to your own palace to rest." Alexander threw Isabella onto the bed. "Tonight, I am staying right here." The chief eunuch had already tactfully dismissed the palace staff. The next day, Alexander cancelled the morning court session and did not emerge from Springbliss Palace until afternoon. The court of the Cheng Kingdom was in an uproar. After that, Alexander continued to spend his nights at Springbliss Palace, sending tremors throughout the Cheng Kingdom. A king neglecting his duties, a bewitching concubine interfering with politics. The court churned with gossip. Finally, after 7 days, Alexander resumed his morning court. Immediately, memorials impeaching Isabella flooded the palace like a snowstorm. Isabella knew everything that was happening in the outer court. But she also knew that in those 7 days Alexander had not once touched her. They had merely slept in the same bed. On the very first night, she had learned from Alexander's sleep-talking. He wanted to conquer the Qi kingdom, but his ministers opposed it, so he was feigning a retreat to advance, using her Springbliss Palace as cover for his scheme. 7 days was enough time for the Qi kingdom to break their treaty, giving Alexander a powerful excuse to send his troops. And she, Isabella, was merely a pawn in his game. The day his army marched would likely be the day she was cast aside. Mistress, something terrible has happened." Luna ran in from outside, crying. She fell to her knees as soon as she entered. "The old Grand Tutor killed himself by smashing his head against a pillar in court. They're saying you're a scourge on the nation, and they're pressuring the emperor to order your death." Isabella was so startled that the needle in her hand pricked her finger. She brought the finger to her lips. "Don't panic," she said. "He probably won't." "Mistress, the imperial decree is already on its way." Luna sobbed. Isabella knew Alexander could be ruthless, but she never imagined he could be this ruthless. The chief eunuch was already standing in the courtyard with the imperial edict. Isabella stumbled out, knelt, and prepared to receive it. "Karen Lee is a renowned beauty, virtuous and respectful. She has won my heart. She is hereby promoted to the rank of consort, with the title Consort Zhao." Isabella was stunned. She had known her fate in the Cheng Kingdom would be fraught with peril at every turn, but she had never imagined becoming one of the emperor's consorts. To make her a consort under these circumstances, could it be that Alexander felt sorry for her? Or perhaps he had developed a sliver of affection? She bowed to accept the edict. Regardless of his reasons, she had gone from Chiron to consort in just 7 days. Before she even had a chance to go to the palace to offer her thanks, the Empress Dowager returned to court and immediately summoned her for an audience. In Merciful Palace, in her new capacity as a consort, Isabella knelt before the Empress Dowager of Cheng. This was the woman who had single-handedly pushed Alexander onto the throne, a woman whose kind demeanor hid an undeniable authority. And next to her stood a beautiful woman, her eyes burning with a jealousy and hatred for Isabella that was impossible to hide. "So, you are Isabella Lee?" The Empress Dowager studied her for a long time before speaking. "Such heavenly beauty. You've only been in my kingdom for 7 days, and you've already thrown the entire court into chaos." Isabella lowered her head and remained silent. The emperor had used her as a pawn. She had no excuse to offer. "Aunt," the woman said, "Isabella Lee knew you were returning to the palace, yet she didn't come out to greet you. This is a great disrespect." Only then did Isabella realize that the woman beside the Empress Dowager was her own niece, Alexander's imperial noble consort, Vivian. With that one sentence, Isabella knew Vivian was a master of intrigue. She hadn't accused Isabella of meddling in politics, but only of disrespect. Even if Alexander were there, he would have nothing to say in Isabella's defense. "Isabella Lee, do you admit your guilt?" Isabella kowtowed. "If the Empress Dowager says I am guilty, then I am guilty." "What a fine, then I am guilty." Guards, according to palace rules, give her 50 slaps to the face. Palace attendants came forward at once, grabbing her arms. A hand was raised, poised to strike. Mother, you returned so suddenly. Why didn't you send word to me? I would have ridden out of the city to welcome you. Alexander was already striding into the hall as he spoke. All the servants dropped to their knees. Vivian rushed over to him, her eyes bright. Emperor, I was in seclusion with my aunt at the Merciful Grace Temple, and I missed you day and night. Alexander walked right past her, grabbed Isabella's hand, and pulled her up from the floor. Consort Zhao has been serving me with great care. I wonder how she could have offended the Empress Dowager. I will take her back and deal with her punishment myself. And with that in front of everyone, Alexander completely disregarded proper etiquette and pulled Isabella out of Merciful Palace. For her sake, the emperor had contradicted the Empress Dowager for the first time. An inept ruler, an unfilial son, Isabella knew she had just been charged with another crime. That night, Alexander did not leave. The imperial kitchen sent over a sumptuous banquet. Isabella knew this was to celebrate her securing her position as a consort, now deeply favored by the emperor. Alexander held a wine cup and looked at her. A room full of congratulatory gifts, favored above all others in the palace. Do you like this reward? She bowed her head with a bitter smile, but when she looked up again, her face was filled with joy. I am overwhelmed. I fear I am not worthy of the emperor's favor. Alexander's expression was unreadable as he set down his cup. You are smarter than I imagined. If your brother had understood the situation as well as you do, his kingdom would not have been destroyed, nor would he be a vassal king. To trade a fallen kingdom for a lifetime of peace for the people of Yan, I could ask for nothing more. Her words made Alexander pause for a moment, and then he burst into laughter. There really aren't many women with your kind of insight. Be obedient, and I will certainly not mistreat you. Isabella asks for nothing more than to light the emperor's lamps and warm his bed, she said meekly, hearing the danger in his words. I have never been fond of Vivian. Compared to her, I find you much more interesting. The imperial noble consort is peerlessly elegant and of imperial blood. I only wish to live my days in peace. Please, cherish the imperial noble consort and do not displease the Empress Dowager. She could see that he disliked Vivian, but she didn't dare hope he had even a shred of feeling for her. For a man as ambitious as Alexander, his only true love was his empire. But she didn't know what she had said to provoke him. He suddenly smashed his wine cup, pulled her into his arms, and said softly, Do you not believe that I can protect you? She never knew Alexander could be so gentle, but before she could speak, an arrow shot through the paper window and embedded itself in the wall with a whoosh. Immediately after, the sounds of clashing blades came from outside, and someone shouted, Catch the assassin! Protect the emperor! The attack was fierce, but the Imperial Guard's response was even fiercer. They quickly subdued the assassins. Alexander led her out of the palace. Outside, blood flowed like a river. Just as she was about to turn back into the palace, she heard Alexander shout, Be careful. A man in black lying next to her suddenly sprang up, a gleaming blade slashing toward her throat. She was yanked back by a powerful force. She heard the sound of ripping flesh. The next moment, Alexander was holding her, blood gushing from his left shoulder. Emperor? The chief eunuch's voice cracked. Stunned in Alexander's arms, she was completely lost and panicked. Are you all right? I'm fine. Those were the last words Alexander said to her before he was carried into his bedchamber. In that moment, her heart ached as if it were being squeezed. It was also the first time she dared to contradict the Empress Dowager, begging to be allowed into his palace to care for him. Alexander's wound wasn't deep, but it was dangerously close to his neck, less than an inch away. He had saved her, nearly at the cost of his own life. She was genuinely moved. For the next half a month, she tended to him meticulously. He spoke to her with a new warmth and gentleness, and she catered to his every need. 7 days later, Alexander issued a decree to the entire empire, promoting Consort Zhao to the rank of noble consort for her merit in saving his life. The position of empress in the Cheng kingdom was vacant. With one leap, she became the most favored consort, second only to Vivian. Her rapid promotion in the emperor's favor were so remarkable that she was recorded in the official histories of the Qing kingdom. But that day, it was he who had saved her. As she gazed at Alexander sleeping peacefully on the royal bed, a daze came over her. This was her husband. If not for what happened later, she might have truly believed that she held a place in his heart. The thought of living out the rest of her life in peace seemed like a decent fate. That was the first heavy snow of Emperor Hongjing's 3rd year. It fell for 3 days and 3 nights, snapping the plum branches in the courtyard with its weight. After the assassination attempt at Spring Bliss Palace, I was moved into Phoenix Palace. My food, clothes, and all my provisions were the finest in the palace. Alexander Cheng assigned more than a dozen eunuchs and maids to serve me. Compared to the cold quiet of Spring Bliss Palace, this place was bustling. The imperial court was even more turbulent. The assassins had left a survivor who confessed under interrogation that the Qi kingdom was behind the attack. Alexander now had his pretext for war, but he was met with opposition from the Grand Tutor. I knew he was displeased. The charcoal fire in my chambers burned brightly, chasing away any hint of the chill outside. I had personally brewed some green plum wine for Alexander. It was his favorite. I knew just 1 cup could temporarily soothe his frustrations. "My lady, it's terrible. Lady Luna has been seized by the imperial noble consort's guards." A maidservant stumbled into the room, her face pale as she cried out. My heart leaped into my throat. I scrambled to my feet and followed her out. On the way, she told me what had happened. Luna had gone to the imperial kitchen to check on the evening meal when she accidentally jostled the noble consort's lotus seed soup. A royal physician had then detected a deadly poison in that very soup. I knew then that this was Vivian's doing. She didn't strike often, but when she did, she aimed to kill. I wasn't afraid of death, but I was terrified for Luna. She had been by my side since she was 10 years old. We were like sisters. When I had to make the perilous journey to the Qing kingdom, she had followed me without a moment's hesitation. I would rather die myself than let anything happen to her. By the time I rushed to Merciful Palace, Luna had already been beaten with rods until she was a bloody mess. The sight of her felt like my heart was splitting apart. Take this wretched servant away for harsh interrogation. Find out who put her up to this. At Vivian's command, the guards were about to haul Luna away. I threw myself forward to block them and knelt before the Empress Dowager. "Empress Dowager, this is impossible. Someone has framed her. The Imperial Guard will get to the bottom of this." The Empress Dowager's word was final. As I watched helplessly while they dragged Luna away, Alexander arrived. I clutched at the sleeve of his robe, my eyes pleading desperately. "Say no more." Alexander barely glanced at me. He gently shook off my hand, bowed to the Empress Dowager, and said, "I have heard everything. An incident like this in the palace must indeed be thoroughly investigated. Take her away." A chill ran down my spine. I was certain he knew Luna was innocent. So why was he doing this? It felt as if my heart was being torn in two, a raw pain spreading through my entire body. "There's no need to investigate," I ordered it. I lifted my head and looked directly at Alexander. Alexander's face turned ashen in an instant, his gaze piercing me like a bolt of lightning. Everyone was stunned. The Empress Dowager frowned. Vivian leaped from her seat in shock. "You? Say that again?" I knew that no matter how I tried to defend Luna, it would be useless. Vivian was targeting me. If I confessed, perhaps Luna might be spared. I forced Luna to poison the imperial noble consort. "Isabella, do you have any idea what you're saying?" Alexander's voice was chillingly cold. "Poisoning a noble consort is a capital offense." "My lady, no, it wasn't." Luna struggled, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. I grasped her hand and looked at Alexander. "Emperor, pass your judgment. Since I have confessed, there is no need for further interrogation. I will accept any punishment." After that, I was confined to my palace. Luna was taken away, but I knew she probably wouldn't be tortured anymore. Alexander stayed at Merciful Palace for the entire night. I knew they were discussing my crime. I was ready to accept any outcome. I only remembered the look in Alexander's eyes when he ordered my confinement, like a wounded beast in the dark, full of raw anger and resentment. The imperial edict arrived the next morning, but it was not a death sentence for me. Instead, it decreed that Vivian was to become the mother of the nation, Alexander's empress of the great Cheng Empire. I didn't receive a second edict concerning my punishment. Instead, Alexander came himself. He stood before me, looking down. I kept my head low, unable to see his expression. "You were willing to betray me for a mere maidservant." I snapped my head up and looked at him in disbelief. "When have I ever betrayed you? But you, have you ever stood by my side even for a moment? You and the Empress Dowager and the imperial noble consort, oh, she should be called the Empress now. You are all a family in the end." I fell to my knees. "Forget it. Please, issue your decree." Whether it was death or imprisonment, I could bear it. But Alexander said, "From this day on, you are my imperial noble consort." I looked up at him, incredulous. His gaze was deep and left no room for doubt. Suddenly a thought struck me, and I grabbed his robe. "What about Luna? What did you do to Luna?" "Luna was dead. She died because of me. Alexander said that to protect me he had to sacrifice Luna. Vivian got her wish and became empress, and I was absolved of any connection to the poison plot. Only Luna died. The harem was peaceful, and everyone was happy. Alexander thought it was a worthwhile trade. That night, Alexander stayed in my palace. He held me tightly and, for the first time, made me his. Afterwards, he held me in his arms and told me he had chosen the finest tomb and the best burial goods for Luna. I thanked him for his grace. In my sleep, tears fell again as I murmured, "The only person I had left is gone." For the entire last month of the year, the Cheng Imperial Palace was abuzz with preparations for the Empress's coronation ceremony, a double celebration with the new year. The once lonely palace became extraordinarily festive. I watched as Alexander took Vivian's hand and walked step by step up to the imperial dais. They offered sacrifices to heaven and their ancestors, kowtowing 3 times. The court officials cheered, "Long live the emperor! Long live the empress!" I saw Vivian adorned in a phoenix crown and embroidered robes, her smile as beautiful and radiant as a blooming flower. I saw Alexander, in all his imperial majesty, receiving congratulations from all the assembled officials. The Empress Dowager and the Grand Tutor were all beaming with joy. I was an outsider. In truth, I always had been. If the 2 months Alexander and I had spent together, treating each other with respect and affection, were a dream, then Luna's death completely shattered it. After the grand ceremony, the palace banquet began. I felt exhausted in body and soul and only wanted to go back and rest. But Vivian publicly requested that the emperor have me perform a dance for everyone's entertainment. The officials fell silent. The hall was deathly quiet. I was, after all, an imperial noble consort. For a noble consort to dance in public was like having my clothes torn from my body, stripping me of all dignity. I looked up at Alexander, high on his throne. He was looking at me too. Finally, a single word came from his thin lips. "Granted." I smiled. I had expected it. I walked gracefully to the center of the hall, turned back to Alexander, and bowed. In a clear voice I announced, "I will perform a dance to wish the Emperor and Empress eternal life, as radiant as the sun and moon." With that, I began to dance, pouring every ounce of skill I possessed into the performance. The music was like a sudden storm, fierce and fast. My dance changed with the rainbow skirt and feathered dress melody. I performed the most complex dance for the most heartless man. But suddenly my vision went black, and I collapsed, my body falling heavily to the ground. I heard a panicked clamor. In the blur, I saw Alexander leap from his throne and rush towards me. When I woke up, I was lying in bed. Alexander, who had been waiting, saw my eyes open and immediately walked over. "You're pregnant? Why didn't you tell me?" I was stunned. I had thought I was just overtired lately. I never imagined I was carrying Alexander's child. Thinking of the vigorous dance I had just performed, I panicked. "The baby, is he?" "The child is fine." Alexander grasped my hand. "You only strained yourself. Thank the heavens, the baby is safe." I looked at him, confused. Alexander was wearing golden armor. "Emperor, shouldn't you be with the Empress right now?" Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside. Someone shouted from beyond the door. "Your Majesty, the Grand Tutor and all 120 of his accomplices have been apprehended. We await your orders." Alexander didn't get up, but I could feel his hand tremble. A single word escaped his thin lips. "Kill them." On the night the Emperor of Cheng crowned his empress, The palace was filled with song and dance, while outside, swords flashed. Alexander had completely purged the Grand Tutor's faction. The Empress Dowager stepped down, and the Emperor finally held absolute power. That night, Alexander did not leave me. He told me many things. I had thought I was just a pawn for him to use against the Qi kingdom and to balance the court. I never expected his true goal was to clean house. Isabella, your mother and I made an agreement. Eliminate the Grand Tutor, but keep the Empress. The position of Empress, in my eyes, is no different from a eunuch or a maid. It's just a title. The one I care about most is you. Isabella, give birth to our child. I will give my empire to him. That night, he said so much. A lonely emperor who had endured for so long was willing to confide in me. I had to have a place in his heart. As I touched the child in my womb, a warmth finally seeped into my heart. I offered my heart again, never imagining I would lose my child. It only took 1 month to purge the court. Alexander stabilized his rule. I had to admit he was a born emperor. And so, the Qing kingdom began its grand campaign against the Qi kingdom. Alexander decided to lead the army himself. I was 3 months pregnant at the time. The night before he left, I asked him if it was possible not to go to war. Alexander shook his head. If he didn't fight, others would. The ruler of Qi was a tyrant. If he wasn't taken down in one fell swoop, there would be no peace for the surrounding kingdoms. On the day of Alexander's departure, I watched him on his tall horse, his army arrayed at the palace gates. I placed a hand on my belly and said, "Our child and I will wait for you to return." The army's banners fluttered in the wind. I climbed the city wall and watched his vast army march away. At that moment, I thought that as long as he returned safely, I would willingly give up 10 years of my life. After losing the support of the Grand Tutor and the Empress Dowager, the Empress's temperament gradually mellowed. The two of us mostly kept to ourselves. I missed Alexander day and night. Every time I heard news of a victory, I was overjoyed. He was gone for half a year. Deep autumn arrived again. My belly was already large, and I was due in another month. I often felt the baby move inside me. I grew more and more impatient to meet him, to know if he would look more like me or like Alexander. "My lady, bad news. The Emperor's army has been defeated in a decisive battle." When a palace maid reported this, I panicked. I rushed outside, tripped, and fell hard to the ground. A sharp pain shot through my abdomen. The palace maids ran about, shouting, "Someone, get the royal physician! Hurry!" For 6 long hours, I used every ounce of my strength. The baby was finally born, but I heard no cry. When the wet nurse brought the child to me, his tiny body was already purple. A mouthful of blood rose in my throat and I fainted. Grief kept me bedridden for 7 days. On the 7th day, Alexander returned to the palace. Seeing him, I was overcome with a mix of surprise, joy, and sorrow. Surprise because he had returned alive, sorrow because our child was gone. I struggled to throw myself into his arms, tears falling like broken strings of pearls. "Emperor, I failed to take care of our child." There was no comfort, no reprimand, only Alexander stiffly pulling away from my embrace. Only then did I see that his face was as cold as ice, his eyes filled with indifference and resentment. And only then did I notice Vivian, whom I hadn't seen for months, standing beside him. A high-ranking eunuch announced the decree in a loud voice. Imperial noble consort Isabella Li colluded with Lucas Li of the Yan kingdom, betraying her sovereign. Her intentions were sinister, her crimes heinous. She deserves death. In consideration of her recent loss of an imperial heir, she is to be confined to the cold palace for life, never to see the light of day again. Guards roughly pulled me up from the floor. As I passed by Alexander, he seemed like a complete stranger. Just 6 months ago, he had sworn that I was the only one in his heart. Now, he had cast me into the abyss. I also finally understood. My brother, Lucas Li, had taken advantage of Alexander's decisive battle with Qi to launch a surprise attack on his rear flank. It was a coordinated assault that trapped the Qing army. Of his 300,000 troops, more than half were lost. Alexander needed someone to silence the public outcry, to restore his imperial authority and military morale. And I, Lucas Li's own sister, a hostage consort, naturally became the perfect excuse. He lost half of his empire. I lost the 2 most important people in my life, my child and my husband. Heh, what a pair of ill-fated lovers. I could only laugh at myself. A full month after being thrown into the cold palace, Alexander came to see me. I knelt to greet him, unfazed by honor or disgrace. He scrutinized me for a long time before speaking a single sentence. "Do you hate me?" I looked up and saw that he had lost a lot of weight. His dragon robe hung loose on him. The kingdom and the world weigh 1,000 pounds in the emperor's heart. If I can add even a fraction of an ounce to that weight, then that is my fate. "Isabella," Alexander staggered slightly, "wait for me for 3 years, just 3 years, and I will bring you out of this cold palace." I kowtowed heavily. "If the emperor has even a shred of affection left, please allow me to live out the rest of my days here." "Isabella Lee." Alexander yanked me to my feet, forcing me to look into his eyes. "You have so little faith in me?" "A consort blamed for the country's defeat. How dare I speak of trust?" "You." Alexander raised his hand to slap me, but in the end, it never fell. The words country's defeat had stung him, and they had severed the last connection between us. Watching his figure disappear through the deep palace gates, my heart slammed shut along with them. I, Isabella Lee, will never be anyone's pawn again. But that very night, I was abducted from the palace by a group of masked men. They used an incense to knock me out. When I woke up again, my brother, Lucas Lee, was standing before me. "Isabella, you've suffered," Lucas wept, covering his face. Only then did I realize I was back with the Yan army. I had been unconscious for 3 days. "Brother, what on earth is going on?" "Alexander was defeated and made you the scapegoat. How could I bear to watch you suffer by his side?" "Isabella, don't blame me for raising an army while you were in the enemy camp. The Yan kingdom has endured for too long and its people can't bear it any longer." "Brother, what are you planning to do?" I had never seen Lucas so driven, so full of fire and ambition. Alexander's defeat cost him half his forces and shook his army's morale. My Yan kingdom has allied with the Qi kingdom and the Kai kingdom. Our combined army of 500,000 will surround the Cheng capital. This time, the Cheng kingdom will be destroyed, and we will avenge Yan's humiliation. Isabella, don't worry. I will personally cut off Alexander's head and avenge you. Brother, the ruler of Qi is a violent tyrant, and the ruler of Kai is debauched and inept. Allying with them is like asking a tiger for its skin. Lucas's gaze wavered for a moment, then he looked away. "Right now, I only want to kill Alexander and destroy the Cheng kingdom." "And what happens after you destroy the Cheng kingdom?" "After destroying Cheng, we'll deal with Qi and Kai." "Isabella, you don't understand these things. You just need to watch as I personally execute Alexander, and then you can enjoy eternal peace with me." After speaking, Lucas flicked his sleeve and left. I never knew my brother harbored such ambitions. Qi and Kai were like tigers and wolves. After destroying the Cheng kingdom, the 3 kingdoms would inevitably fall back into war. The thought of Alexander sent a chill through me. Although I resented him, I had never wanted him dead. But now it seemed there was nothing I could do. My brother treated me like royalty, but he also had me watched. I heard that after I escaped from the cold palace, an enraged Alexander had killed over 100 palace servants and guards. The Cheng court was in turmoil, and the people were uneasy. I couldn't imagine a man as confident and composed as Alexander becoming like this. Every time I thought of him, my heart ached. But my heartache couldn't stop my brother. In the winter of the 4th year of Emperor Hongjing's reign, the combined armies of Yan, Qi, and Kai, 300,000 strong, broke through the Cheng capital and stormed into the majestic imperial palace. I stood on Lookout Mountain, the highest point outside the capital, watching thick smoke billow from the palace as fires raged. I heard the soldiers' shouts like howling wolves and the cries of the palace staff and common people, like starving ghosts. I turned to the general who had been guarding me and said, "I'm going to the palace, now." The general shook his head. "His Majesty has ordered the princess to stay here and watch how the Cheng kingdom falls. They're slaughtering the people." A surprising fury rose in me. Are they planning to massacre the entire city? The people of the Cheng capital are putting up a desperate resistance. His Majesty must teach them a lesson. I was burning with anxiety, but powerless to do anything. "Alexander, where were you now? Were you already dead, cut down by a sword, or riddled with arrows?" The thought of it made my legs go weak, and my heart felt like it would split open. Just then, wolf smoke signals suddenly rose from all directions around the Cheng capital. The sound of horns boomed like rolling thunder, and battle cries tore through the sky. Below, tens of thousands of people began to swarm the imperial city, trapping the allied forces of the three kingdoms within the capital. Report. General, this is terrible. We don't know where so many soldiers and civilians came from. They're attacking our forces. The allied army has suffered heavy losses. Isabella Lee, look what you've done. A furious curse rang out. Lucas, covered in blood, ran back with a troop of soldiers. The moment he saw me, he slapped me across the face. You actually tipped off Alexander. Have you forgotten that you are a princess of Yan? The slap made my ears ring. My brother had used all his strength. It took me a moment to stand up straight again. Brother, listen to me. I won't listen. Men, seize this traitor, Isabella Lee. We'll deal with her after we break through. My brother wouldn't even look at me as he gave the order. Seeing the furious gazes of the Yan soldiers around me, I knew Lucas had successfully shifted the blame. A cold wind whipped around me. I felt chilled to the bone, just as I had when Alexander threw me into the cold palace. My own brother, Lucas, was also using me as an excuse. Your Majesty, it's bad. The Cheng army has set fire to the city. Our men are almost completely wiped out. It's a river of blood down there. Your Majesty, the main force of Kai has been annihilated. Their king has abandoned the battle and fled. Report. Your Majesty, the commander of the Qi army was beheaded by Alexander. His head is hanging on the city gate. I watched Lucas roar at the sky, his body trembling as he drew his sword. Follow me. We fight our way out. Lucas, you can't escape. A clear, cold voice cut through the thunderous din of battle like a crack of lightning. I spun around frantically and saw Alexander, clad in golden armor, mounted high on a white horse, his gaze fixed icily on my brother. Surrender. I can grant you an intact corpse. Ah! Lucas suddenly threw his head back and laughed. He shoved aside the soldiers holding me, pulled me into his arms, and pressed a long blade to my neck. If Lucas must die, then I'll have your beloved join me. In that instant, I saw a flicker of panic in Alexander's eyes. My heart ached, but I spoke with perfect composure. Brother, you've chosen the wrong leverage. I have no value at all in Alexander's eyes. You two can stop acting. Lucas pressed the blade closer. Alexander, you really were defeated in the battle with Qi, weren't you? The king of Qi found a woman to impersonate me and used her to threaten you. And you, Alexander Cheng, you actually hesitated. You missed the best chance to counterattack. The disastrous defeat at the Qi capital is a disgrace you'll never erase. Alexander's face was grim, his fists clenched so tightly they were sweating. So what if I was? If not for that defeat, how could I have lured you three kingdoms to my gates so brazenly? What are 150,000 men? Every citizen of my Cheng kingdom is a soldier. Lucas, you lost. You must admit it. Besides, Isabella is your own sister. The winner becomes king, the loser a bandit. I accept it. Lucas's blade had already broken the skin on my neck. I only ask you one question, Alexander. Do you love Isabella? Alexander's thin lips trembled, but his voice was firm. Just a pawn. I closed my eyes. I had always believed this, but hearing Alexander say the words, just a pawn himself, I felt the very last door in my heart slam shut for good. In that case, I will grant you your wish. Don't. Alexander's shout shattered the night sky. But the cold glint of a sword had already pierced flesh. With a spurt, blood sprayed across my face. I snapped my eyes open. Lucas had fallen to the ground, his own sword plunged into his chest. Sister. I'm sorry, I have to tell you. Your child. It was Alexander. He had Vivian. Poison your baby. Lucas breathed his last, and I felt the blood in my veins freeze solid. Men, take Lucas and have him sliced into 1,000 pieces. Chop him up and feed him to the dogs. Alexander suddenly roared. He leaped from his horse and was about to run toward me. Stay right there, I shouted, stopping him. I retreated step by step to the edge of the cliff, my gaze fixed on him, burning with hatred. Isabella. Alexander's voice trembled, but he didn't dare move an inch. I have always been true to you. Calling you a pawn was just to deal with Lucas. Don't believe it. I came here to take you back. Once the world is at peace, I will move into your Phoenix Palace and never leave you again. I lowered my head and chuckled softly, then looked up to see Alexander's eyes were bloodshot. Alexander, When I entered the palace and performed that dance, you pushed me up the ladder step by step. It was to use me to stir up the court and completely eliminate the Grand Tutor's faction. Is that right? Yes. But I took another step back. You were defeated by Qi, and you threw me into the cold palace to appease the souls of the 15,000 soldiers who died, to consolidate your imperial power and restore military morale. Is that right? Yes. Alexander's fists were clenched. I took one more step back. Alexander, you deliberately let Lucas rescue me. You deliberately let the three kingdoms attack the city. You sacrificed the entire Cheng capital to fight him to the death. You laid the groundwork for this when you were still crown prince. And today, you finally used me as the bait to play this grand game of chess you planned for 10 long years. And I just happened to be the key piece that set your game in motion. Am I right? Yes. Heh. Emperor, your true heart for me was just to use me, completely and utterly, as a pawn. Panic seized Alexander's heart. He raised his hands but didn't dare move his feet. Isabella, listen to me. I never wanted to harm you, and I never wanted to kill you. Just now, when Lucas held that knife to you, my heart was torn to shreds. Isabella, come back to me. Give me one chance. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. From this day on, I am willing to be your pawn. To take an emperor as a pawn, I, Isabella Lee, have no desire to play such a game. I shook my head and took another step back. Behind me was a sheer drop. Alexander, I asked, I have one last question for you. My child, was it really you who ordered the poisoning, just as Lucas Lee said? At the time, I had lost a critical battle. I feared I wouldn't make it back alive. The Cheng kingdom could not allow someone of Yan blood to take the throne. It was the Empress Dowager's decree, and I approved it. I shut my eyes as tears of blood streamed down my cheeks. Alexander, Alexander, you truly are the solitary ruler, the one and only emperor. Alexander's body trembled, and he sank to his knees. His voice was pleading. Isabella, I was wrong. It's my greatest regret. I have already deposed Vivian. Give me just 3 months, and I promise I will unite the realm. When that day comes, I will name you Empress. Isabella, will you be my wife? A pawn, a wife. One word apart, yet worlds away. I gave a calm smile. Your empire is all you truly love, isn't it, Alexander? If that's the case, then let me add the final brushstroke to your grand ambition. With that, I shouted to the herald, Consort Isabella, forced to her death by the kingdoms of Yan, Qi, and Kai, now dies for her country. The emperor has decreed, to avenge the nation and wash away this shame, we will crush the 3 kingdoms within 3 months and unite the realm. Then I threw myself from the cliff, vanishing into the dark abyss below. Alexander lunged forward but only managed to tear off a piece of his beloved's sleeve. A roar of grief from the emperor of the Cheng kingdom shattered the night sky. Consort Isabella, forced to her death by the kingdoms of Yan, Qi, and Kai. Unite the realm! Unite the realm! The herald's voice boomed like a great bell, the message echoing again and again until it spread across the entire battlefield. It was late autumn once again. A solemn air drifted on the wind with the falling leaves. It was the 3rd year since Alexander Cheng had united the realm. The day Isabella leaped from the cliff, Alexander had searched the ravine below for 3 days and 3 nights. He never found her body. He assumed it must have been torn apart by the raging river. But Alexander did not stop. He tucked the scrap of cloth he had torn from Isabella's sleeve close to his heart and began a brutal, whirlwind campaign that would last 3 months. Isabella's final words fueled the courage and fury of the Cheng soldiers. In just over 2 months, Alexander conquered 2 of the kingdoms. After a year of rest and reorganization, he finally achieved his goal of uniting the realm. On this day, as the capital gates swung open, the emperor of the great Cheng Empire, Alexander Cheng, rode out alone. He whipped his horse onward until he reached a secluded villa on the outskirts of the Cheng capital. The villa was nothing more than a single wooden cabin. In its moss-covered courtyard stood a solitary earthen grave. The headstone was inscribed with a few simple words, "The tomb of Isabella, beloved wife of Alexander Cheng." In the royal mausoleum, there was a magnificent tomb built for the empress. Alexander had only visited it once after its completion. But it was to this lonely grave in the wilderness that he came most often. He knew Isabella had despised the filth and mire of the palace. Only green mountains and clear waters were a fitting tribute to her dignified grace. Alexander sat before the grave. He set out a few small dishes of food, then carefully took a flask of wine from his robes, as if it were a treasure. He poured 2 cups. "This is the plum wine you loved so much. It took me a long time to learn how to make it, but the taste is still nowhere near as good as yours. I'll keep practicing. For now, just have a sip. I approve the new agricultural decree. Taxes and labor duties are lighter now. The people are very happy. They say I'm a good emperor. The realm is at peace. Everyone, scholars, farmers, artisans, and merchants, has food to eat and clothes to wear. I think you would be happy to see it. The hibiscus at Spring Bliss Palace are blooming again, and the crabapple tree you chose for Phoenix Palace has grown much taller. Isabella, it's been 3 whole years since you left me. Isabella, I miss you so much." Alexander murmured on and on, drinking as he spoke. His voice grew softer and heavier until finally he crushed the crystal cup in his hand. Plum wine and blood mixed together, staining the earth on the grave. Alexander had always believed his life belonged to his country and his empire, to end the wars and bring peace to the people. He had achieved all of that. But now, in the rare moments of quiet, all he could see was Isabella. He held all the power in the world, a man destined to be remembered as one of history's greatest rulers. Yet he had no idea how to endure this pain. This endless longing was tearing him apart from the inside. He had no one to talk to. All he could do was sit alone before this grave, speaking to the tattered scrap of clothing buried within. The emperor wept softly, his voice raw as he spoke. "That day, he said my empire was all I truly loved. What I wanted to ask you then was, if I had been willing to trade this entire empire for you, would you still have been my wife?" "I would,"